Hi, everyone. Hey, thanks for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to you guys today about so many of us. I wish it was me, but not yet, but have gotten new puppies and new dogs over the season. And let's face the fact, many of us want to train our dogs. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of dog agility. It's a wonderful experience to be able to have that bond with your dog and do the training. But the truth is, how do you do that at home? And you may or may not have some of the equipment. So how do you train that new puppy effectively from your living room? Living room agility. So in order to actually tackle this task and really learn from the best, I've decided to invite one of our regular guests with Jessica Ajou she's the co-founder of United Dog Agility, and she's pretty amazing, some of the stuff she's accomplished. But today we want to go back to the very basics of dog agility. So you're going to enjoy this show. You're going to want to get the show notes, and there's some really cool, nice surprise video that Jessica has made specially for this topic that you're going to be able to take advantage of. So if you just join us, make sure that in the notes you put the word agility. That's going to give you access to this really cool video that she's going to talk about doing some living room agility. And of course, as usual, we'll provide you the show notes through that. So make sure you put the word agility in our notes. And of course, as you know, we always do some one TDC giveaway on this live show. So what I want you to remember too is to make sure to put some Paw Loves hashtag in the notes, Paw Love. And when you do that, you get entered into a one TDC bottle giveaway. What's really cool about Paw Love, the concept is share something you've learned, something you agree with, or something you want somebody else to know about. Okay, so we need to get into this with our superstar United Dog Agility co-founder, learning about living room dog agility for puppies or new beginners. Let me do the magic here and bring our superstar. Here we go. Here you go, Jessica. Hey, thanks for joining us, Jessica.
Hey, thank you, Olivier. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Thank you for being with us. I'm so excited about this topic because many folks, including yourself, have been getting some really cool new puppies, and some people just adopted some dogs and they want to do some activities. So this concept of living room dog agility is like awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we see agility and think, oh, it's the obstacle course. That's how I describe it to people. Like, what do you do for a living? Well, have you seen on TV where they do the obstacle course? Like, that's that's the final product. But a lot of training can be done with no equipment. So pretty cool. That's what we're going to talk about.
Well, yeah, let's go into that. Actually, you kind of stole my first question, so that's perfect. This is what I was going to ask you. Okay, so do I need equipment to get started in living room dog agility? How does that work?
Yeah, so the short answer is no. There's a lot to be done before we actually get to the obstacles. Like I said, that's kind of the shiny, the finished product. That's the part we like to watch on TV. That's what many newcomers to the sport think about when they think about agility, or even what some of us who have been doing it, like we can feel like we want to get in a rush to get to the equipment, but that's really like that's more of the finished product. So a lot can be done as far as foundation training to get them started on the right foot. And if I think about agility, it has two components: the dog's job, which is to perform the obstacles and follow the handler's direction, and then there's the handler's job to give the instructions and tell them where to go. The handler also has the job of teaching the dog, but so a lot becomes our responsibility. But the foundation training of those two components can be done really without obstacles.
Okay, good. So you heard it first from Jessica Ajou. It's not a necessity to have all the equipment to get going in the world of dog agility with your puppy or your new dog. And if you just join us, we're covering the very topic of living room agility. So thanks, Jessica, for joining us. And if you just joined, make sure that in the notes you put the word agility, because you're going to get a really cool video. We're doing some one TDC product giveaway, and of course you'll get the show notes as well. So Jessica, I want to go back to one word that you talked about, because you used a word that seems kind of a common sense, but I don't want to assume, and I'd like to go really into the details. You talked about foundation. So you know that I have a lot of friends like you guys that are like super experts in the world of agility. And when you talk about foundations, even if you're an expert, in your own words, you've been doing this for many years, what does that mean really? What does the foundations really mean? Can you expand on that for us a little bit?
Yeah, so I think the simple way to think about it is like foundations, it's the beginning, like within like actually in like construction, like foundation, that's the bottom portion that the house rests on, right? It's what everything else, so whether it's the house, whether it's a theory, whether it's your principles, the foundation is where everything starts. And the more solid that is, the better the end product. So when you're thinking about foundation for agility training, it's all the things that go into training before you get to the fancy shiny product, as I said, which is the obstacles. And I think in a comment, we hear about foundation training a lot, and to kind of help simplify it, I think of it in three different categories. And there is the body awareness, which is the actual physical side of agility, right? I mean, the word agility itself implies like physical action, to be agile. And when you get started in this with the dogs, especially puppies and young dogs, like their bodies are growing, they're changing, and they're not going to be able to do what a trained agility dog is able to do yet. And there's things that you can do to develop their body awareness, their flexibility, the ability to turn in both directions, right? We actually are requiring dogs in agility to be ambidextrous, to be able to work on their left lead, work on their right lead, turn both directions, make all these direction changes. And to some dogs that comes easily, and to others it takes a little bit more work. And if you started to work on that at the very beginning, before you're asking them to do it through the weave pulls or over jumps, that's the foundation that we're actually talking about. And actually, as a bonus to this this talk that we're having, we're going to give that video that shows all of these exercises that I'm going to be referring to. Can you tell us how we get that?
Yeah, we're going to do that. So folks, that's a good point that Jessica is bringing up. The video that she's talking about, all you have to do to access it, you can actually do it right now. In the notes, just put the word agility, like many of you folks have already done, and that will provide you some of the actual visual of the foundation exercise that Jessica is referring about.
Right. So one of the ones in the video, and I qualify this under body awareness foundation, is to teach the dog to turn away from the handler. So dogs naturally want to come towards us. I discussed this at length with our leads video, but even if you think about like how we feed the dogs, like they are wanting to look at us. And so just the simple idea that they can pivot their body away from the handler, getting them to turn in both directions. It sounds simple, but really when they start to do it, some of them flop over, some of them sit, some of them are like, I absolutely cannot turn away from you. So all of these things like you can do with like literally nothing, and you can do it anywhere in your house, in your kitchen, and getting them to be able to operate turning both directions. So there's a lot of different body awareness things they can do, but if you're like looking for a like very basic one, that's where I would start. So second thing to foundation training is like the obstacles. And even though we're not at the final point of obstacle training, obviously for the beginning, there's things that you can do to teach them about what's coming. So think about like the contact obstacles. They have to climb up on them. They have to be on this wood or rubber surface. The seesaw, it moves, it makes sounds. Jumps, they have to go towards the jumps. They have to learn to interact with these objects, right? Dogs don't necessarily think, let me go jump on that table, or let me go around this obstacle. So those are things that you can install, the idea that there are things that you need to go interact with. And so actually a very good foundation exercise that you can do in your living room is to teach the dog to commit to an obstacle. And what the word
Mm.
commit means, it just means to decide to go, to interact with it. So you can teach them to go around an obstacle. So unlike the turn where we were having them turn around, like if you think of, okay, Lysol, and then teach the dog to go out and around the thing and come back to you. Now, this would emulate going to a jump. This would emulate committing to a tunnel. And since we don't have those things necessarily laying around, you can use pretty much any household object. In the video, you'll see I'm actually teaching my Shar-Pei to, I use a foam roller that I've just stood up. So it's like a vertical item that she's going out and around. And then I used a suitcase because the suitcase was actually a little bit thicker. And so there was a moment where when she went around, she couldn't see me. All right. And actually, it sounds so simple, but that will affect the dog if they have to decide not to look at you and go behind it. So you can get pretty creative. In the park, we've taught them to go around trees, around bushes, just things that you can send them to go like interact with. That kind of gets the basis of commitment to obstacle training.
Excellent. That's the really good point. So what you're saying basically in that short video that you have that you guys can get for free, by the way, just if you just join in, we're with Jessica Ajou, the co-founder of United Dog Agility, and she's talking to us about living room agility. And in that video, I think what I understand from you is that you're emulating an experience with the dog in simple living room environment that can be transcribed downstream and actually being on the agility course, or when you're taking classes, or if you're competing. But there's an element of what you shared about it that I want you to go a little bit further, because what I've noticed when I've come to your center and I see you guys training, there's this the ability to have that dog being super connected, number one, but also there's this element, which is really my next question, which has to do with following the handling. And I've heard you, and I've spent time with you in your center before, and you refer to follow the handling. Can you expand on what that means, and of course the importance of that as it refers to living room training agility?
Sure. So earlier I mentioned that the dog's job is to execute the obstacles and follow the handling. And then the handler's job is to tell the dog where to go. And following the handling is the third component of foundation training that I would think about. And basically, it's a phrase that describes how the dog learns to read your body language.
Okay.
Right? So they read body language quite naturally, but there's certain things that speak to them louder than others. So where you're looking plays a part, what hand you're using plays a part, what direction you're facing. But all of this, the point of having the body language is to tell the dog where it's supposed to go. So as the handler, you're the one who knows where the course is, what the path that you want them to follow through that course. Right. And you start to teach the dog how to follow the path that you are setting. Okay. So a good foundation exercise for this is to teach them that they should be on one side of our body or the other. Because think about agility. You're going to be running the course. If you're running and that dog wants to come in front of you, there will be, hopefully not, but could be a collision, and the dog is now facing you. We can't operate through the course with the dog running in front of me. So we teach them that they should be at one side or the other. So whatever side I'm indicating by looking there, by using that hand, that's the side that the dog should be on. And even though they might do this naturally, they want to curl in front of you to look at you. So a really good foundation exercise is to teach them to be on one side and moving next to you without cutting in front or behind. In the video, I do this, I think with Lou for sure, maybe with the Shar-Pei as well. And what I'm doing is just keeping a piece of food in my hand and looking on that side, moving and trying to keep them next to me without flipping in front or cutting behind, so that they learn we're traveling together, and the path that the dog should take is the one that's parallel. Ooh, I gotta stay in the frame. Parallel to where the handler is traveling. So it's half instinctual, but you can reinforce it by teaching them to operate at your side and that they shouldn't just cut in front or cut behind you. Otherwise, the handler is losing the ability to direct the dog where to go.
Got it.
Yeah. I'll bring up go ahead. Sorry.
No. Please go ahead. Finish your thought.
Sure. So I'd say I was going to bring up another really good foundation exercise for following the handling, because I talked about the dog like committing forward to an obstacle, but
right.
I have 2 legs, my dog has 4, and they can go faster than me, but I need to teach them that the path might continue in front and ahead of me. So even though I want the dog to operate at my side, I don't necessarily want them to remain at my side. It's not healing. It's actually like the path continues forward. So to teach the dog to send forward is actually a really good foundation exercise to teach them that that path could continue. So it's as simple as having them on one side or the other, putting something that they want out there and sending them ahead forward. Not you running up there, but teaching the dog that they can travel ahead of you and go forward to whatever the item, whether it be a food bowl, whether it be their toy, down the road, a tunnel or an obstacle. You're teaching them that they don't necessarily have to be glued to your side. Otherwise, you're going to have to run very fast in agility, but that the path can continue ahead. And again, some of them, it seems so intuitive. If I put the toy out there, my dog will go. Yes and no. Some of them start to wonder, why aren't you coming with me?
That's right.
So that's another super simple foundation exercise that yields very big results down the road if you teach that to them right from the get-go, that they can operate ahead of you. It's actually it's foundation too for beginning distance training and independence.
Excellent. That might be another subject we could talk about in the future, actually, is distance training. I think that's can be very useful. And I always remember that moment when you actually at Westminster, what, about 2+ years ago, and with Famous, and man, the speed on that dog and how there's no way for you to run that fast. So I think what you're describing is a perfect example of that gained you so much time just because Famous was just comfortable being
actually, the interviewer right after I had won, she's like, she's so fast. How did you tell her where to go? I'm like, or how do you tell her where to go? I'm like, I stay out of the way and set the path and just let her rip, because there's no way. There's no way. I mean, if they're pacing to you, then they're not going as fast as they can.
And while still having that connection, that's the part that's amazing. I have a question for you actually on that. In the meantime, folks, if you just join in, we're talking about living room dog agility with co-founder of United Dog Agility, Jessica Ajoux. Thank you for joining us. And if you've just joined, make sure that you go into the notes and put the word agility. She's referring about a free video that is going to be accessible to you. And as you have seen as well on our screen, we're doing some giveaways of the One TDC product, which a lot of you folks are using for your dogs. I know Jessica's dogs have been on it for a long time now. So just put the hashtag in the notes, Paw Love. This is also a way when you hear something that you're learning, or if you want to share, we're watching also any comments that you have, put Paw Love. We'll know what's interesting to you when you hear something from Jessica, or if you have questions and so forth, and that'll get you in the drawing. But Jessica, I want to talk to you a little bit about where you've taken us so far in really that relationship with the dog. And I think a lot of us that might be very new to dog agility or even experience is, how do you deal with when the dog doesn't necessarily do what you wish the dog would do? And let's face the fact, we're human beings, there's a little bit of an emotion about that too. It can be frustrating. And look, I train Sasha just a tiny bit, and sometimes I want her to do something, she doesn't do it. And that's not that I lose my patience, but it's frustrating. So how do you make that happen? How do you make that relationship, that bond, so we can do the things that you're talking about?
Yeah, so it's a multi-level question, and I think like you said, there's an emotion component for the people, and that's true. And some, like, I've heard some people say, like, try to take the emotion out of it, but like, I don't know if that's entirely true all the time for agility training, because you're developing a partnership with your dog, agility or not. Like, I can't hide my emotions from my dog. So if I am feeling frustrated, the best thing for me to do is to stop and to take a step back, because I have to remember that I'm responsible for teaching this dog. And on the flip side, especially if you're new to training dogs or training agility, you need to listen to what your dog is actually saying too, because you are both the student of your dog and your dog's teacher. And that's like a little bit unique in agility, especially for people who are starting out. Like you, Olivia, if you're starting agility, you are learning what to do. You're learning how to make the dog turn in the circle. Something I can do very easily because I do it a million times in a week, right? So the mechanics I know how to do, and I can focus more on how the dog is feeling. And then for you, if you're getting frustrated because it's not working, like there's some good odds that you're actually not doing it very well, okay? And that's not because you're not trying, it's just because you're not as proficient, and it's a new skill for you too. So I think a really important thing to remember is that you're going to make mistakes as you are trying to teach your dog, and the dog will too, and that's fine. So you need to learn to communicate and to read what your dog is saying to you. And think of it from the beginning, like the relationship, the partnership that you're developing with your dog. That's why you're doing the sport, right? If we're doing it to qualify or to like win big competitions, like, no. I've gone to Westminster twice more and I don't know, win again. Like it's really hard to constantly win things or be perfect. In fact, there's no such thing as perfect anyway. So the point of doing this with your dog is to enjoy the journey and the partnership and the relationship that you are developing while working on these skills. Second part to that, I think you're saying, like, if the dog isn't wanting to respond, you also have to take a look at what motivates the dog. And I think we're going to come to that in a little bit. So we'll get back to
that's one of my questions for you. That's right.
But ultimately, the thing to remember is that you are teaching the dog, but they are also teaching you, okay? Agility is actually a sport that makes intuitive sense to them. The more motion, like the chase, they understand that. And so as much as we're trying to teach them what to do, don't forget to like react to what they are telling you as well.
That makes a lot of sense. I think it's very humbling what you're saying, because you're right. There's a sense of I'm teaching the dog, but what you're saying is, no, like in my case, it'd be I'm a complete student and I'm trying to teach. But I think, and this is something I've heard you say before, I think even with the many years of training that you've had and that you've taught people, I think this is why I've seen you always looking for you're always learning. And I think this aspect of being a student with your dog, I think probably puts you in a more forgiving stage with the errors, because you realize that, yeah, they didn't do, but what is it that I have to learn? So I think that's a big time, big hearts for that. And then paw love learning for all of us. So I really appreciate that. Whatever you do, whatever your journey of dog agility, it's going back to what you're saying, which is that bond in relationship, unique relationship. I want to go back to some living room training and really go into about the obstacles, because I think, there's a natural tendency. It's like, well, the obstacles that are out there is very specific, but you just explained to us earlier that it's really the emulation of what it's going to be like on the course. So kind of the bottom line is, I've got the wrong question on for us here. I wanted to go about the obstacle one. Let me change that. Here we go. Hopefully it'll come through now. Okay. How can I train obstacles with no obstacles? I'm in my living room. I don't have all those fancy poles and all that stuff. So how do you give us some tips? And maybe some of you folks are listening to, you may have some tools that you jump in, we're watching, we can actually draw some more interesting points from you guys as well. But tell us what you do, Jessica, for that.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing to do is to remain creative, right? Just because an A-frame is very shiny and has nice surfaces and all these things, it's like we can emulate, like you said, various of these components without needing to get wrapped up in buying the big pieces of equipment that may or may not fit in your yard if you have a yard or whatnot.
That's right.
So since I'm talking about contacts, okay, the dogs have to climb on the different surfaces. Used to be wood, nowadays it's more rubber surfaces and such. But if you think about it, a puppy, they may not have ever experienced standing on a surface that feels like that. Maybe they felt like the pads or the grass. I mean, we just raised our litter of puppies and we tried very hard to expose them to different surfaces so that it wouldn't be so different. But, you know, if you've just rescued a dog or adopted a dog that you don't know about the past, you might have to put a little more work into it. So exposing them to different surfaces to climb on is a really good thing. Like, for example, it could be as simple as put a like, what is this? A binder. Make the dog climb on the binder. And dogs are not necessarily wired to touch things. They're actually more avoiding them.
Good point.
And so to get them to climb on a weird surface. In the video, I use Tara, who is my Shar-Pei, and she is a very socialized dog, but I put a cardboard box, I put a pillow, and then I put a comforter that's within that big packaging. So it's all like crinkly and such. Like, think of this, and this is very big. So it's crinkly, feels weird, all uneven. And she was like, well, I'm not stepping on that. And anything that you can run into where you're like, oh, okay, they're not so comfortable, that's something I can work on, right? Emulates what they're going to maybe feel with the seesaw, not really liking the movements or things like that. So you want to teach them to go through all of it and really, like, just get creative. There's no limit to it. I mean, if you don't want your dogs on the furniture, perhaps don't teach them to go up on the couch. But like,
that's what I was thinking.
Our dogs go on the furniture. So
exactly.
we could get them climbing on the pillows and such. I mean, granted, they can learn the difference between when they can or can't get on. I mean, you may not want to teach them to jump on your kitchen table, but I actually wanted to bring this up. My very, very first agility dog was named Mocha, and she was a rescue from a local ASPCA. I think I was 15 when we got her. So, like, we don't know much other than they said she was a trucker's dog and she was very good in the car. So possibly that was true. And I learned about agility and I started to get very creative. So I would have her climb up on park benches and do like dog walks on the park benches. Any small retaining wall, I would let her climb up and taught her to balance on those things. And it's just like little things like that are agility related. And even though it's not a dog walk, it's something that you can do with them to, like, expose them to the idea of climbing on things and interacting with the objects. I think another really good one, and this is like foundation. We typically think foundation for weave pulls, but I also think it works for tunnels or tire, because for those things, those obstacles, there's things above their head, and dogs are not inclined to like want to have things above their head. So the exercise in question is to teach the dog to weave between your legs. So I think you've seen it with like the Frisbee dogs or the trick dogs. They'll do the like weaving between your legs. And that's a really, really good one because emulates this back and forth motion, which will be applicable to the weaves, but also that they have to go through a constricted space. And they're not so keen. I mean, I didn't even remember about it until I started training my puppy again. And I'm like, oh, I'll teach her to weave between my legs. And she was like, well, I'm not going under. Like, I went, oh, okay, great. I will help and teach this to you. And I didn't even think about how that could be. I mean, I know it, but I had a little bit forgotten about it because all my other dogs are already trained and such. And it's just such a simple thing that you can do with them that exposes them to those feelings.
Yeah, and actually the weave is also, and many of you folks do it as a warm-up exercise because it's really good for their spine as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a body awareness one too.
Excellent.
Maybe it's the number one.
Excellent. Well, all of that is in the video, and I think many of you folks that have joined already, and if you just joined, we're covering the living room agility. And just go into the notes section and put the word agility. That's going to give you access to the show notes, as well as the video that Jessica is referring about. And again, we really appreciate some of the paw loves that you've been giving. So if some of you folks, you hear something that you're learning, you have a good point, like I'll just show you some of the feedback that we're sharing as well. That was earlier, but there was a great feedback on, there we go. about one point that you brought out. So thank you, Jennifer, for that great tips. Thanks, Paula, on set the path. And I think that's a really good point, something that you can so easily do within the living room itself. Okay, so we talked about a point, and you were kind of saving it for my question earlier, but I want to go into this because at the end of the day, you talked about the bond with the dog and not being frustrated. But at the end of the day, you really want that dog and yourself. We're motivated to want to train with them, but we want to get that motivation in them too. So I know it sounds like a really basic question, but it really isn't. So I want to ask you, Jessica, when you have a dog and you're doing some of the basic trainings like you're talking about, even in the living room, what's your strategy to discover what exactly is the motivator for your dog, and what are the different kinds?
Sure. So the motivator we're describing is like why the dog is working, like what are they working for? And there's a lot of different thoughts about this, and I'll share mine. And the reward is something that the dog likes,
Right.
and it's the dog who picks the reward. Okay. So what that means is as simple as you need to get to know what your specific dog, the dog that day that you're training, what is it that they actually like? Because they're individuals, and just like people, like some people love cilantro, to others it tastes disgusting. So you really can't go off it. I'd be like, it's delicious, put it on everything. But yeah, good. And then someone else is like, it tastes like soap, and like I would never know that because it's not my experience. So you really, from my perspective, if I'm trying to motivate the dog to want to do something, right? Agility tends to be motivating to them because they like to figure it out. It's motion, but let's be honest, learning is stressful no matter what you do. Okay. So you don't want it to be too stressful, but if they don't know the answer, some of them are like, oh, I don't know the answer, what to do? And then you'll see again, individual differences. But if there's something in it for them, right? You think like, why do you go to work? To get paid. It's better if you like your job, but at the end of the day, you still probably wouldn't do it if you didn't get paid. So what we're paying them with is the thing that they like. And I really believe that it's not what I like, it's what my dog likes. And I'll share with you a story that I went through that reminded me of this, is because like I had a Cocker Spaniel that I was training. She's since deceased because it was a while ago, but she it's a Cocker Spaniel. She likes food, period. Right? Would she tug? Nah. Would she chase the toy? Nah. And now the thing is, you can encourage them, and there's things to do to get them to like it. But at the end of the day, the dog wants the food. So I use food. And it's really that simple. Like I don't get all bent out of shape about trying to get them to like something that they don't intuitively like, because if they don't intuitively like it, it's no longer a reward. Okay. My border collie Optimus, I get lazy with the border collies because they tend to like toys. And when I used to train in a barn before I had my lovely building, like rope toys, they get really gross in the sand and stuff like that. So I didn't like using them. I only like to use like toys that the sand didn't get stuck on because it was just nicer for me. He wanted nothing to do with those. He wanted the rope toys. And I'm surprised that it took me so long to like just get in and let him have the type of toy that he liked, because I'd use food and he'd be like into the toy. But the second the rope toy came out, he was bonkers. Like, yes, no matter what it is, I'm going to figure it out. And it's like such a no-brainer to use the thing that the dog wants.
That's a really good point. I love your point there with Optimus, with the rope. That makes a lot of sense. So I think the key word that I learned from you is that what drives your dog bunker is it. And you got to find what that is, that extra spunk and energy that comes out, and then you use it. So I think, again,
I'll give you a pro tip here, actually. We have a, oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, no, we just had a pause, but go ahead.
There?
Carry your thought, please.
Yeah, I'm going to give you like a super pro secret tip right here. I know.
Nice.
Squeaky Kong tennis ball. Done.
Whoa, say that one more time.
The Squeaky Kong tennis balls, the tennis balls that squeak.
They love that sound and they go nuts for it. Awesome. Okay, you heard it here live by Jessica. We know what her trick is now. The bunker dogs, the squeaky ball, tennis ball, also
No, any dog, pretty much. If they're gonna like a toy, they're gonna like a squeaky Kong tennis ball.
That's awesome. Good, good, good. Now you heard it. Is there a specific color or it's irrelevant?
Oh, I'm not sure. Although Optimus likes like the Chuck It balls that are it's just crazy. See, I know it to this degree of what my dog likes. Not just the Kong balls that you can put in the Chuck It, the one that squeaks. And if he sees a normal Kong ball and a squeaky one, it happens to be blue, zeroes in on the blue one, won't even take the other one. And I know that there's some people out there who that would bother. Like they'd be like, oh, I want him to like whatever. But not me. Like, whatever that dog likes, that's what I'm going to use, because I want it to be a reward for him. And if he doesn't really like it, then it's not really a reward.
I totally agree, and I think that Anne, actually, I'm going to share that for the group. I think she summed it up perfectly. Let the dog choose. Yeah. Thanks, Anne, for that comment. This is a perfect one. Thank you. Let me go into and really a question that I think many of us have a question on is the frequency of training, because we get really excited. Like even watching your video, start applying some of those things, letting Sasha jump on the coffee table when my wife is not watching me, wondering what I'm doing. But
don't blame me.
But no, okay, of course not. I'll blend the video. The thing is, you know, you mentioned about being a student and really connecting with the dog. And the question is, you know, like us, how much can we absorb? So how often should you train? Every day, throughout? I mean, what's your secret to that? Because you got puppies, so you're in the midst of that right now. How often should I be training my dog?
Sure. So I'll say this. The short answer is that frequent short training sessions, like 3 to 5 minutes, maybe even it's only 2 minutes, but frequent short training sessions yield the best results. Now, that's like the baseline. Some dogs can do more. Some dogs should do less. You got to read and interpret what your dog is saying. I think actually one of the good things, like if you're at home, right? If you're thinking I can train at home in my living room, my kitchen, whatever, you do have the ability to do the short, frequent training sessions, because you could do 5 minutes here, you could do 3 minutes there. Unlike when you are driving whatever distance to go to a specific class, then you sometimes feel like you have to do like the whole hour and whatever it is to maximize the time. But sometimes like a whole hour training is not necessarily the best thing for your dog. So a really good way to look at it is the opportunity to train without the equipment and to do some of these foundations things at home, is that then you can do them in short pieces without feeling like you're wasting time with access to your instructor or with access to the equipment or whatever. So then you could teach the dog the tunnel when you go to the class, because you spent the time at home doing the things that didn't involve the obstacles and such. I think of like, this is my favorite example, like a flower, right? Beautiful flower. What is it going to look like? There are training sessions that I'm basically like, I planted the seed and now I'm going to let it grow, because they don't just get better every time. Sometimes you train them and you feel like nothing has been accomplished. Other times you're like, wow, they've really grasped it. Ugh, can't talk. And then you come back and you're like, I thought we understood this, what has happened? But just remember, like, it goes up, it goes down, and sometimes they just need some time to percolate. It needs to like percolate in their mind. Latent learning, teach them something, let them go to sleep. When they come back, they'll know about it a little more. So keeping things very short and productive is worth more than doing things ad nauseum and tiring the dog out. Even for some of the breeds like the border collies, who seem like they will go on forever and ever, there's a point of diminishing returns at which like nothing more is being absorbed. They're just going over, and maybe you could have cut this training session shorter. If I were to have done long sessions with the Shar-Pei or the Cocker, they'd have been like, I'm so over this is so boring, why are we still doing it? So it's a little bit individual, but a general rule of thumb is short and sweet.
So let me ask you on that, because I think you tackled the point that, again, what I like about your training is that you're very focused on not just the emotion of the dog, but also your own emotion. And I think in that link of the two, Is there any tips that you can provide us that when you know it's time to stop? Is there any certain flags or things that you've seen from your years of training experience where, here's a perfect example. When that happens, it's time to pull out, and also know when to keep pushing, because you just like training and working out. Sometimes it's pushing yourself to that little bit of that extreme that gets you to push through. Is that applicable for a dog or not? So if you can just expand a little bit on when to stop or when to push.
Yeah, it's a very I think it's a complicated thing, and this is where sometimes it's agility training and dog training rides between the art of science and art, or the line, sorry, between science and art. I will say this: if you are getting frustrated, like the handler, the person, stop.
Okay.
No point in doing anything that's causing you frustration. One, you're probably not in a very good mental state to be a good teacher. And two, many dogs, like, they don't distinguish between when the handler is correcting themselves and when they're directing it at the dog. And I'm not saying like that the handler is necessarily getting mad at the dog, but the dog can't interpret the difference. And so even if I'm like, oh my God, I made this mistake again, if I do that around a dog who's learning, the dog's very likely to interpret, oh, I did something wrong. And so if you are not feeling in the mood, if you have any little bit of frustration, just stop. It's fine. Like, you don't need to continue or push through that, because that's nothing learning curve wise. That gets emotional, and you can't be like frustrated and be an effective teacher. As far as like when to keep going, I think the dog is the best one to tell you that. If you feel like they're on the verge of a breakthrough, and maybe like, let's say something as putting the feet on the crinkly surface. Like, I went because, I'm training it, and maybe Tara puts her foot on it and she's like, oh, that was worrisome. And I try it again and she's like, no. Maybe I keep going until she puts that whole foot on, and then I leave it alone. If I can see she's right on the verge of a breakthrough, then I would keep going, and then I could leave it be. But let's say a different scenario. She's on the verge of touching it. She touches it and she's like, oh my God, I'm super scared. Okay, I might test it a little bit more, but now I have to adjust my criteria. No way is she going to actually put her whole foot on it. Maybe I'm just going to drop the cookie on the surface and let her go eat it from it. So you might have to adjust, because if you push and make them scared, that's terrible. It should never be feeling like you're pushing them through fear, because you can't do that. It's completely ineffective, and it only makes them more fearful about stuff. So you just have to read it accordingly and put it at a level that is appropriate. I'll actually say this too. It's often people say to end on a good note. That's a very good point, but there are some training sessions where that almost feels impossible. And like, whether you're getting frustrated or it's just not working or whatnot, and rather than you deteriorate more by continuing to push, you can just stop because you will do less damage or cause less problems if you just decide, all right, we'll stop. I think about this, like, if I leave the dishes in the sink overnight, okay, I'm not making any progress to clean them, but they'll still be there. Like, it's okay if there's something that wasn't completely resolved, because maybe if you kept pushing in that moment, you were going to make it worse. So if you ever have that happen, just call it. It's fine. Like, you just stop. Yeah, exactly. If you're feeling like, oh, this is getting like, and I think the frustration is like, if you're feeling frustrated, it's you really should just call it, because nothing else is going to happen productive.
No, that's a really good point. Thanks for those tips. If you've just joined us, we're with Jessica Aju. She's the co-founder of United Dog Agility, and she's giving us a lot of tips about living room agility. And if you don't know this about Jessica, she actually has a psychology degree from Princeton. So when she talks about the psychology and the relationship with the dog, there's a lot of brain cells that's being shared there in helping us understand that bond and that relationship. And someone actually in the group just said something which made a lot of sense. I want to share that with you, because I thought that was also a nice recap about stopping and waiting for the next day. So Sherry I thought it was really nice what she said. I find that quite often when my dog sleeps on it, they come back the next day and they just get it. I think that's a really, really good point.
That's the plant the seed and let it grow. Like it.
Yeah. Excellent. Cute picture, Sherry, actually. I love that. Thank you for that comment. I do have to do something with you right now and clarify something, Jessica, that you said, because somebody in the audience, um, well, they want to make sure that they got the credit for what you said, and they really believe that they should get the credit. So hang tight with me for a second here. And somebody I think you might know, called Perry. So I want to get the credit for the squeaky Kong ball, please. So
Oh, that's so funny.
it's
I was
official.
going to say that that's Perry's super tip, and then I did it. So it just goes to show you.
Yeah.
Honesty is the best policy. I didn't claim it was mine. I just claimed that I knew it. But yeah, that's Perry's trick. Here, I'll give you the second one. Squeaky tennis balls for the toy dogs. Fresh pet dog joy for the treat dogs.
There you go.
And that's
there you go.
Credit to Perry DeWitt.
So it's official, Perry. I hope we're good now. No fighting on this. This is your credit, and it's official, and it's actually live. So thanks, Perry.
That's so funny.
Jessica, I want to thank you for all of those details that you shared with us. And what I want to do is I want to step back now, and especially for those that have just joined now, you've covered a lot of things on this video. And if you've just joined, make sure that you get the show notes and the video that Jessica's talked about extensively in this show. So in the notes, if you haven't done that yet, put the word agility. That will prompt you, and you'll get access to that. It's free. It's available. Thank you for making it available to us, Jessica. And for those of you, like all of us, including Jessica and Perry and all of our dogs, are on our product, the One TDC. If you want to get some of that, very simple. We're doing a giveaway. We do that with most of our shows. So, and we do a random drawing. So just in the notes as well, do the hashtag #PawLove, and we'll be able to provide that for you. Now, in being in the drawing, that is. So I want to go back, and I want to do a recap in doing, there you go. Ready for the recap? I think you're going to get some assistance.
Yeah, he's having this one. He's like, can I have my squeaky Kong tennis ball now, please?
Hey, well, you talked about it, and you already know the name. So let me do the recap. So we're going to do our recap right now. I'll take you out of the stream and then start all over again and go right into the key tips for everyone. All right. So here we go. You've got a new dog. You got a puppy. You've got a dog you just adopted, and you want to get into dog agility. And here's the question. How do I start? Can I start from the living room itself? And the answer is absolutely yes. So we're about to get the top tips on how to do that from Jessica Ajou, who is the co-founder of United Dog Agility. So here we go. Let me bring our expert right now. There we go. Hey, thanks for joining us again, Jessica, on the living room dog agility top tips for us. So, Jessica, I got a new dog. I want to do dog agility. I've heard about doing this from you, from my living room. Give me 5 key tips on how to approach this. Tip number 1.
I think the tip number 1 is actually good for dog agility and also for life. A strong foundation results in big success. And for agility, equipment is not required.
Excellent. That is straight to the point. We appreciate that. So equipment is not necessarily an absolute necessity. Awesome. All right, we've got tip number 1. Now, let's go into tip number 2.
Following the handling, commitment to obstacles, and body awareness are the basics for agility.
Excellent. All right, so now we've got 2 tips, and let's go to tip number 3, dog agility in the living room. How do I start?
All right, so be creative. Be creative with your use of household equipment. No one says that the suitcase can't be representative of a jump. It works very well.
Excellent. So be creative. You don't have to get all the equipment. Look around your home and be creative. Awesome. Yeah. All right, let's go into tip number 4.
All right, so this is a big one for me. The dog chooses the reward.
Got it. Reward is important. Let the dog choose the reward. Awesome. All right, let's go with our final and really important tip in relation to dog agility, dog training at home in the living room. Tip number 5.
So short and frequent training sessions yield the best results.
Excellent. Short, and many of them. Is there a limit to those many of them? How do I know if I can keep going?
Read your dog, okay? If they're losing a little bit of enthusiasm, perhaps you're doing a little bit too much, okay? If you are feeling that they want to keep going, you can. Just remember to keep it short and sweet, and you'll be good.
Excellent. Well, there you have it. You have the top 5 tips on living room agility by Jessica Ajou. Jessica, again, I want to thank you for joining us today. You're always so giving and sharing. And you have so much information actually on your website at United Dog Agility. I would encourage all of you to share it. She does seminars and things like that. She gives us some of the videos, but she has a lot more information for you. And if you really enjoy some of those videos and you have questions for Jessica, put it in the notes in here, because we'll capture that, and that'll encourage us to actually give you the things that are meaningful for you, for your training, and the bond. And if there's any questions that you have, drop it into the notes. We'll capture that and we'll make it a future show for you guys. Jessica, thank you for joining, and we will be seeing you very soon.
Thank you so much for having me, Olivier.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.